To be a nice guy or a good man? Hardly the most philosophical question that's out there, but one that holds a weight in the modern day nonetheless. In this video, we're going to be looking at the fundamentally different modes of engaging, navigating and operating the internal and external world as a man, advocating that nice guys assimilate a more truer representation of masculinity that is self-serving, life-affirming, and finally breaks the curse of them always finishing last. Now, I know this is a very hotly contested and hotly discussed topic and theme among the male community, and this video isn't here to bash nice guys, because it's my conviction that inside of all of us men there's a form of nice guy. This is mainly going to be looking at the fundamental differences, looking at the things that brought them there, about why we have an epidemic of nice guys that are struggling to find their identity in the world amongst a haze from their upbringing, cultural influences, the environment and role models inside of their life. So this isn't going to be an apathetic bashing of nice guys. I have my issues with the word nice. In a later video described misspellings, I've discussed the topic of nice and how that was originally used as a word to describe something that's boring, something that's empty, vague and rather vapid. So for this to be used in the modern world as a compliment straight away goes against what the origins and etymology of the word truly meant. So let's list some characteristics about what we see from nice guys versus the good guy. Nice guys are agreeable. The less resistance, the less tension, the less conflict, the safer they feel and the better they feel they are doing their job as a man. On the other side of that, good men aim to be authentic at all costs. And being authentic doesn't always mean that you're nice, but it means that you are true and you are being an equal and fair representation of who you are. The nice guys are desire and impulse based. A good man, on the other hand, virtue and principle based. Nice guys tend to hide and mask their masculine energy, for being too assertive and being too driven is a display towards being confrontational, and they tend to hide this masculine form of their personality and yet settle for more of a chaotic feminine side to their personality in the form of emotional fitness or incontinence. When you compare that then to the good man, a good man will have assimilated both the sacred masculine and feminine properties to his personality. He's more somewhat of a complete individual when engaging with the world, and then is oftentimes a better person to have in the form of a partner, as a friend, as a family member, as a husband and as a father, because he has a more strings to his bow. He is able to nurture, to discipline, to support, and he is able to navigate both polarities because he understands that both of them exist within him. Another thing you see with nice guys is this acting harmless. But the ironic thing with the acting harmless is that they don't do this through choice. They do this and hold a lot of resentment, which in theory can cause a lot of harm long term down the road. Again, when you compare it to a good man, and we've heard this many times before, has the capacity to do harm, yet shows control and civility over those faculties. Nice guys seek validation through their behaviour, as if almost being a good boy or a nice guy is something almost to celebrate, as if they wish to have a pat on the back because they demonstrate all of what we described earlier. That is almost a precursor to them being rewarded for the fact that they show no bite, no assertion, no conflict, and they feel that deep down this behaviour should be rewarded. And oftentimes when it isn't and they end up finishing last, that's when the resentment comes through. The good man is a civilised savage. He still maintains his primordial connection to masculine energy. However, his civilised part to himself, the more sides that he's learned to refine in this feminine side of him, makes him civilised yet with the capacity to do harm. Whereas nice guys in essence are just like eunuchs. They've had their genitalia removed, if only somewhat metaphorically speaking, and the removing of those genitals sees a lack of assertion, a lack of willpower, a lack of drive, and they appear less harm, or feel there will be less harm if they remove their genitalia completely. For those that are not aware of history, eunuchs were slaves in theory that were kept, and their genitalia was removed to stop them from ever wanting to fight back against the people that were controlling and owning them. And when I use this term for a nice guy, I'm really referring to their own self-masochism that has removed their own testicles and genitalia in a way of to put the hands up and say, I'm harmless, I haven't got genitalia, I'm just a eunuch. Let me get my sympathy on. So nice guys, I feel in theory, do have this really old style, chivalrous and romantic side to why they are created. It's that a heart is based in romanticism. And this could be again influenced from culture, from upbringing, too many movies, but also idealism. Nice guys in theory want to be that white knight that rescues Snow White, that rescues all of these archetypical stories where this one representation of a hero, this white knight, arrives to save the damsel in distress and to save the day. The knight always discovered the beautiful damsel in distress on his mission, and oftentimes white knights will forget about this. They like to wear the armour as if they are a knight, but all they end up doing is being of servitude as opposed to having the capacity to yield a sword. Despite the display of calm and ineffectiveness beneath the surface is this raging river of frustration, e.g. always being overlooked, fear of rejection, and it always will fall into this deep form of melancholy or shit fits or even victim consciousness. So even though they may display through cutting off their genitalia that I'm not affected by this and I don't want this, they still deep within them have this raging river of anger because they are going against these natural properties and laws that exist inside of us as men. One of the saddest things I think for nice guys is how they position themselves. They tend to position themselves in places that are ultimately cause this same frustration and the same form of resentment. I.e. they become the best friend of a desired mate. They become a friend of the family. They become a confidant. And what's ironic is with every conversation in this position, they are causing more and more frustration. And thirdly, a last display that you see is this expectance towards the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity doesn't always work in their favour. In fact, they do a lot of things, and what holds this victim consciousness instead is the fact they say, well, I've done this should mean that. And it doesn't always play out the way that they picture. And again, this just adds to that raging river where the nice guy is just a front for this inner conflict that's going on between mismanaged energies, assumptions and beliefs that are causing this very chaotic internal life. But on the exterior, they've positioned themselves, they've placed themselves as this character that wants to be seen in a particular way. So let's talk about the plights of a nice guy. I think the first one is the fizzling out of romance. When in relationships, they are liable to betrayal, their exploitation, and they will lack enforcement of boundaries. They will often capitulate to every front, and the person, for want of a better phrase, is a pushover. Well, it's only so long before the partner that they're with starts to lose that arousal, that desire, because there is no need for this push-pull dynamics that creates a lot of tension, lots of sexual and sensual dynamics is all gone. And because they've planned the white knight role, they think that by capitulating and saying, oh, I won't go and see my friends, I'll have no hobbies, I'll just follow you around and pick up the daisy petals that you drop behind you, they don't realise that what they're creating long term causes problems in the relationship. And that's really sad, because nice guys are the ones where the girlfriend will cheat on them or will use them and exploit them, and they are yet to realise and put the two and two together to understand why this is the case. And it's only so long, because of some of the nature of some women, is that they yearn for the push-pulling and the drama dynamics within a relationship. Now, this doesn't have to come in a negative way and end up being chaotic, but understanding that push and pull dynamics in a relationship is really, really important. But you as a man, if you fold at every opportunity and you capitulate and you have no boundaries, no enforcement of those boundaries, it's a recipe to lose that desire, that arousal and that respect. And there's some horror stories of the nice guys that certainly finish last because of this situation, and it breaks my heart really, because they're only maybe doing this, capitulating, because they're playing the white knight and they're playing the nice guy role. Another thing they seem to exhibit, the plights of a nice guy, is the excessive displacement in destructive patterns. And what I mean by this is that to displace this frustration, this annoyance with having a friend who you really fancy but she only sees you as a brother, these kind of fucked up situations, because you feel this way, you have to displace that emotion, because that's hard work as a man. So it's not uncommon to see an overindulgence in gaming, fast food, porn addiction, anything that involves them, media, anything that involves them displacing this internal conflict and frustration by checking out for a moment and doing something else to displace that sour taste that's building up in their palate for being overlooked, for being rejected. It's just sitting there in the back of their throat. And what can they do in this moment yet displace it by getting involved in something that's quintessentially escapism, which we all do regardless of who you are. We all have our forms of escapisms and muses, but in the case of a nice guy, it seems to be an excessive and destructive displacement. One of the most funniest ones, or bittersweet ones you could say, not so much funny if I promise not to laugh at the nice guys, is this identity crisis that happens. So when they realise and have discovered the mode of operation that they've been using doesn't serve them, there's a deep need to pull the opposite way. So you see this with like MGTOW or incels or going down the red pill route, because once they wake up and they have that kind of epiphany and that kind of smelling the coffee moment and like, what the fuck have I been doing? I hate women. You know, it's all the women's fault. I'm going to go full MGTOW, I'm going to go full red pill, I'm going to go full incel because I'm so frustrated with how I've been. I need to go to the opposite side of it again. So they almost like clock out the game completely and pick up a completely different ideology that maybe might even go against how they deeply feel on the inside, but yet this is a better way of recuperating and rehabilitating. And then the saddest of the most saddest for the plights of the nice guy is the creation of the cuck. And you got to think, after a sustained period of self-loathing, of an inferiority complex, the complete capitulation of masculine energy would see the rewiring of something that should be pleasurable now becoming painful and vice versa. So in theory the carrot becomes a stick. So these nice guys go on so long down this avenue that they end up completely capitulating, and the only way they can get off is if Big Tim comes around and shags your wife.
Hey! You get back here and you make love to my wife!
Come on. If that's not the complete folding and the conquering of a man, I don't know what is. And I'm sure I will get a lot of backlash for that, because there's people that like, everyone's got their own kinks, etc. But these psychosexual developments probably started from a nice guy who was just completely capitulating, struggling to find their own identity. And they did this for such a long period of time. The only way they can find any form of significance or any form of comfort is to find comfort in suffering. And they enjoy suffering. And the next stage from that is maybe they can get pleasure from suffering, and what better way than some of a fella coming in and shagging your wife or shagging your girlfriend. I'll let you sit with that for a while, because me as a man, as a warm-blooded man with testicles, that doesn't really sound on any list in any lifetime of something that I'm in the market of doing. But I guess if I was frustrated with myself because I lack assertion and I'm so weak and I'm so weak-willed, maybe physically weak, maybe I've got no presence, that this is the creation of a cuck. And you can somewhat see it like a line of spectrum, like a bell curve maybe, between nice guy that starts with one capitulation all the way into the complete folding of that entity, where sadly they've become kind of just almost like a, what they call them, fucking pay pigs for some chick to show their body online. Well, we spoke about the plights of a nice guy, but let's talk about the pursuits of a good man. A good man, in essence, is principle-led in the way that he engages with the world. He has a firm moral compass. He pursues higher ideals. And a very old trait, but nevertheless the most important one. They see their word as an oath. And this might seem like, by today's standard, quite an outlandish and quite an archaic view. But the words they speak, they realise they will uphold. And they'll be careful in how they conduct themselves and the words they use around the people they're engaging with, as well as the people they care about. Another pursuit of a good man is that of high emotional fitness. Because they develop higher emotional fitness, then their impulse control and their vices are almost kept in check by this skill. And if you look at modernity, emotional fitness and resilience is something that's seldom seen. And in this era of emotional incontinence, a good man will have a good hold and good frame over his emotions. And with that comes good reflective skills as well. if we acknowledge that a good man has the capacity to do harm because of his faculties, because of the skills he's developed, well, equally important then, if he has this capacity to do harm, that he builds on emotional skills and emotional fitness so that he can control and to manage. They're always adventure or mission focused. So this could be family, this could be friends, this could be impact, this could be knowledge or wisdom, this could be adventure, conquest, this could be exploration. But on the pinnacle of their mind, as opposed to it being desire and impulse driven, they're driven for this higher calling of adventure. Because good men aren't perfect, and being a good man, it isn't the pursuit of perfection, but it's perfection in its practice. A key one, such a key one, is the outlets of resistance and suffering. Exercise, some form of martial arts, sport, a courage call. Whether that even mean that when he's engaging with people, like everyone has to some regard some form of anxiety around it. The good man doesn't allow the anxiety to win when he's engaging with people maybe he's never met before. So it's courage, it's exercising, it's practicing these principles, it's having skills in self-proficiency, self-reliance, self-protection, and these have to be an outlet of resistance and suffering. Is a common theme that you'll see among good men. And finally, the last pursuit, which really encapsulates all of them, is bringing into control true masculine energy and ethics. And this is manifested in different types of personality traits, from teasing to chastising to humour to devotion to intensity to ego to brotherhood. These are all channeling masculine energy into a way where they're able to bring it under control, and they get to exhibit and exist in a world where those energies aren't being inhibited or they aren't being shut off through fear of consequence like we see with a nice guy. In fact, they allow them to shine through. And every single good man will have their own priority, their own moral compass and virtues that will be slightly different to the person next to them. However, it's what they value that they drive and steer the helm towards. It isn't being fazed by outside stimulus so much as the mission, the outlets, the courage, the will, and lastly is the final equilibrium of bringing those energies into play so that we may call them a good and honourable man. So it's my conviction that good men aren't made, they are built over time. A learning curve, constant reflection, constant self-work, and an ability to be able to adapt and not to be too egotistical and show the lesser signs of masculine energy, which is kind of stubbornness and hard-headedness. And in this case, when a man commits the focus to becoming a good man, he ceases to realise the things that he's using as a coping mechanism, potentially even in conducting himself as a nice guy, is only truly because he hasn't yet found an ability to truly bring into play the energies that exist inside of him, to really amalgamate the thinking, the feeling and the willing in order to become an entity that he will refer to or others would refer to as a good man. You do not want to be a nice guy. You want to be a good man who people remember, who that they go their whole life and they say, I'm glad I had this interaction, this relationship, this engagement with this individual because of that virtue, because of that humour, because of that kind-heartedness. Do not submit to the cultural pressure, the mixed messages from our upbringing. Try and find and refine who that is for you, because this world is yearning for good men to reappear. There's a lot of nice guys and there's a lot of dishonourable men, and there are not many good men that are walking among the surface, and we want to uplift each other to a place where we develop and grow into that, not beat each other down. Stop submitting to fear and realise that a lot of men on their journeys are always battling being the man of honour or a man of dishonour, and ultimately you have a choice in that. And it might think that that's a big grandiose task and you've got to be like the greatest men in history that have contributed to some way, but even being a great father, being a great son, being a great member of the community is a step along that way. And they don't start with big, over-grandiose gestures that make someone a good man. It's the little things that are done consistently that make a big difference. So if you had a choice between being a nice guy and a good man, what would you choose?
No more!